Hello everyone, Aimer back with a Mission Impossible episode review. This time we have the final episode of Season 5, Episode 23, which is called The Merchant. So Jim goes to a pharmacy for instructions in this one. The mission is to put notorious arms dealer Armand Andersarian out of business. He's planning a big arms sale. We cut to Jim infiltrating a building and getting caught by the guards as Willie watches uneasily, and then we're told we're somewhere around the Mediterranean. Willie heads up the elevator to a hotel room where the IMF is setting up a device so that Barney can monitor the poker table at the casino, where Paris and a wildly dressed Dana watch on, and he tells the others the grim news about Jim being captured, but the plan moves forward as Jim is interrogated. Meanwhile, Andersarian hands over a $5 million check as a non-returnable deposit to his Asian contact Yin for the massive shipment that is on its way. Andersarian's sugar baby Nicole Dubois, between sips of booze, talks to him about all of the people his business kills, but he reminds her that those dead people pay for her swanky clothes and jewelry. He heads down to the casino and joins the game with card shark Paris, jet setter Dana, and some other random patrons. Paris and Dana stage a minor argument over the game, and she leaves. Paris throws a hand to Andersarian, giving it up deliberately, who abruptly decides to quit while he's ahead and chats Dana up for a bit, who takes a not-so-subtle jab at Nicole. Andersarian then receives a message from Willie, who shows him a ring and says the man who owns it needs his help. Jim tells his interrogator very little about why he was interested in the plans for a radar station, other than giving a fake name and that he's from Argentina. Andersarian arrives shortly, referring to him as Hans Tellman, a Nazi fugitive commander who once rescued Andersarian from a prison camp, who was rumored dead. Andersarian knows about Tellman's skill at working with sensitive installations and offers him a deal to deliver the key components of the new radar stations to this country's government for a huge payoff. Andersarian meets with Defense Minister Sartori to get Jim released, and it's quickly arranged. After some haggling, Jim agrees to the heist and heads off to start. His man Leon joins Jim and his crew for their planning session and their truck for their supposed trip across the border. Willie simulates the pre-planned sounds and activities of a border crossing for Leon's benefit. Dana pretends to set up an evening with Andersarian for Nicole to overhear, and when Dana leaves her hotel room, decides to investigate. She heads into the room and is relieved to find Paris within rather than Armand, but also spots Barney's machine to her amazement. When the coast is clear, she and Andersarian sneak into the room where he shushes her and berates her for being jealous and lovesick, rather than thanking her to her dismay. Jim and Willie arrive with their team at the radar station the IMF has set up, pretending to be hospital workers, and Leon wants to join them but gets a bit wary about whether their gas masks have been tested, so decides to hang back and watch. The IMF simulate knocking out the soldiers and take the components. They head back to their warehouse, demanding their payoff, but find themselves face-to-face with a bunch of guns. Jim shows that they still have some of the quick-acting knockout gas, or maybe lethal gas, I'm not sure which. So Leon orders the men to stand down and shows Jim the briefcase full of cash. Jim says he has a remote control to activate the gas if necessary, so he demands they wait until he and Willie are far out of sight before taking a step. The minister arrives to check things out, but finds the equipment to be empty shells of nothing. Paris and Andersarian play again, with Andersarian listening to Barney's instructions through his hearing aid. Barney switches to another frequency, and Paris predictably raises the stakes. Nicole watches from the casino bar as Andersarian gets the urgent call from Leon about the mishap. Andersarian puts on a brave face despite the setback and gets goaded into upping the stakes to $5 million by Paris. Nicole decides to spill her drink on the table to spite Andersarian, shorting out Barney's equipment, and the IMF advantage has suddenly vanished. Things don't look so good for Paris. Andersarian goes all in with a potential royal flush, and Barney is unable to fix the problem. Fortunately, Paris calls a bet and wins, with the minister arriving along with Mr. Yin, both expecting their payments, neither of which Andersarian can make, of course. Mission accomplished. I'm going to give this episode a grade of a D-. The only thing that I can say about this episode in the good category is I liked Jim's role in the plot. The parts where we see Jim at first kind of getting captured and we don't know what's going on, to the whole thing about him being identified as Hans Tillman because of the ring, and especially the part in the warehouse where Jim shows that he was prepared for the double cross by having the canister of lethal or knockout gas or whatever it is ready to throw at the bad guys in case they want to try and pull something. That was kind of neat. I have to wonder, given that the equipment that the IMF heisted from the fake radar station that they created, I actually wonder, I would bet more than even odds that canister of gas is completely empty. But who knows? And with the rest of what I'm going to say, it doesn't even really matter. Let's just move on to the bad. Everything else about this episode, I don't care for. I hate these people. I'm just going to come right out and say it. It's not even that I don't care about them. I just really don't. I just hate all of these characters. Maybe that's a little unfair. I do especially hate the character of Andersarian. I hate the character of Nicole. I don't find anything redeeming even in the other characters like Leon or Minister Sartori. I don't. They're just those two are just completely uninteresting. I can't really say they're bad. I guess the biggest issue I have with Andersarian and Nicole is that they are just completely morally bankrupt. And even to the point where the writers basically put a lampshade on it in their first conversation, where they talk about how Andersarian kills people. And, Nicole tells him that, and Andersarian tells Nicole, well, that piece of jewelry cost 4 dead kids, and, this one cost 6 dead kids. I don't want to seem all, like moral or holier than thou, but, what is the point of that? I really didn't get why we need to be subjected to, that level of moral bankruptcy on this show. It just really bothers me. And, even if you think that, I might be making a bigger deal out of it than it is, okay, that's fair. Maybe I am. Does that matter? Does that do anything for the plot? Does that do anything for character development? No, it doesn't. It just goes to show that, hey, these are really bad people, in case you didn't figure it out. So, I don't know. I just, it comes to a point where if somebody tells you what they are, you should believe them. Well, I believe them. I believe that these characters are really that kind of twisted, and I don't care for that. That's me. It really makes it difficult to want to see Andersarian taken down rather than just going away. Another big problem is that all of these characters, the 3 kisses of death, they are so hefty on this episode amongst the villains and antagonists that they practically cast a shadow. Lameness, schmuckery, and being completely unengaging. Your mileage may vary a little bit on the unengaging, but seriously, it's one of those episodes where I wonder, where somebody who is as much a lame schmuck as Armand Andersarian, how in the heck has he survived this long being an arms dealer? I don't get it. If he's that, easy to manipulate and that gullible, it just, wow, I don't even know what to say. Also, this is just really not a good plot. There's nothing here that we haven't seen before. We've seen Barney's gadgetry when it comes to card tables and things like that. I couldn't even really bring myself to care about the twist at the end with Nicole, basically, sabotaging the poker table. It's just like, oh, okay, you know what, whatever. I know, at this point, by this time in the series, Paris is going to win the hand anyway, and the mission is going to be accomplished. And by this time, it's already been, we're already 45 minutes in. I really, really just find it hard to care. I wanted to just say a little bit about George Sanders as Armand Andersarian. Like we've had the experience in a couple of other episodes, Edmund O'Brien in The Counterfeiter, Luther Adler in Phantoms. in those cases, the actors were, towards the end of their careers and or their lives, and had difficulty just, performing the parts, remembering their lines, that sort of thing. George Sanders had the same problem in this episode. I read in the Mission Impossible dossier, Leonard Nimoy says that, he seemed like kind of a shell of his former self, kind of kept to himself. Yeah, the reason you see him in so many close-ups is because he literally did have to read his lines. And that is sad. I appreciate that he kind of tries to give a lively performance with his voice and his mannerisms, but it is kind of noticeable that, it is kind of an odd performance. And sadly, within a year or so after this episode aired, Sanders, committed suicide. So, there's that as well. And unfortunately, it does kind of come across in this episode. This episode just really, as I've already said, I don't want to belabor too much. There's really not a whole lot good to say about it. And I think there's a lot of that to go around. But I think in terms of the review, I think I'll end it there. So that's basically it for season 5. And this is the end for Leonard Nimoy as Paris and Leslie Warren as Dana. It's also kind of the end for the IMF, basically kind of going around the world and taking people out. We already saw a lot in season 5 about, the IMF dealing with more, domestic antagonists, and that is going to continue through season 6 and season 7. We will start out with that. That'll be my next review of episode 1 of that season, where we will meet up with Linda Day George, who will be the new female agent. And so we're basically not going to have any more Power of 5 episodes. It's going to end up being the Power of 4 at best, because we're only going to have 4 main characters as part of the IMF. Interestingly, I was going to point out that we've already talked about how in season 5 the writers had to kind of structure plots and make stories to kind of play to Leslie Warren's strengths by, being, obviously, we've talked about, younger than Barbara Bain and having a very, very young look. And interestingly, I went and I looked it up, and Linda Day George is only 2 years older than Leslie Warren, interestingly enough. However, just again, from the way she looks and the way that she's built, she certainly comes off as giving an older vibe. She certainly doesn't seem as young as Leslie Warren. That's just how she comes across. So things will be very, very different going into season 6. Like season 5, we had kind of a mixed bag. I won't kid you. Season 6 is also going to be a bit of a mixed bag. But there will be some very, very interesting episodes to talk about. That I can assure you. So, in that spirit, thank you as always for watching. Please like this review video. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And please leave your comments. And let's move on to season 6. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.